Hello and welcome to Writers and Books Visiting Authors Series. This is a partnership with Livonia Public Library. My name is Dan Hurd. I'm the Director of Adult Programs. Writers and Books is a nonprofit literary arts center in Rochester, New York. We offer readings, workshops, and literary programming for people of all ages, all currently available online. Our theme for 2021 is Taking Care. We're celebrating different ways we can take care of ourselves and take care of others this year. You can check out our upcoming schedule at wab.org. Please say hello in the chat and let us know you're there. Feel free to submit questions to the Q&A function. Books are available through our bookstore, &Books. I'll put the links in the chat. We're so excited to have Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati with us today. First, we'll hear her read, and then we'll talk. Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati is a renowned spiritual leader based in Rishikesh, India. She is president of the Divine Shakti Foundation, Secretary General of the Global Interfaith Wash Alliance, and director of the International Yoga Festival. A graduate of Stanford University and a PhD in psychology, Sadhvi has lived at Paramath Niketan Ashram for 24 years, where she gives spiritual discourses, teaches meditation, and leads myriad humanitarian programs. She is the author of several books, including By God's Grace, Come Home to Yourself, and her memoir, Hollywood to the Himalayas, A Journey of Healing and Transformation. Sadhvi, thank you so much for being here.
It's such a joy to be with you, and I'm so looking forward to spending this time with you and your community and really diving into not just the story, not just the plot of my journey from Hollywood to the Himalayas, but actually the way that everyone can journey in their way of thinking, in their way of living, from a way that we could consider the Hollywood way of living into more a way that you could consider a Himalayan way of thinking and of living that really brings us that joy and that peace and that meaning and freedom in life that is what we're all searching for and is actually all of our birthright. So thank you so much for hosting this, and I'm really looking forward to being together.
Thank you. I'm excited to hear from you.
Should I just start reading? Okay. That's the cue. So I was thinking about what passage to share. The book is a book, as Dan mentioned, of my journey, my memoir, from the life of a 25-year-old privileged white young woman originally from Hollywood, having grown up in Hollywood, having then graduated from Stanford University. I was then in the midst of a PhD program. And I went to India with a backpack at the age of 25 because my husband was on a spiritual quest. He wanted to find a guru. He wanted to find enlightenment. I just liked the food. I was a very strict vegetarian. And when he said, let's go to India, the one thing that I thought was, at least I'll be able to eat happily. In India, at least they know what it means to be a vegetarian. And the food is great. So I agreed to go. And the book is my full journey. That which happened upon arrival, all of the incredible miracles of grace that took this unintentional spiritual seeker, this 25-year-old who from the outside looked like she had everything. all of the opportunity, all of the privilege, all of that which we think we need in order to be happy. And yet, who wasn't happy? On the inside, I was really deeply suffering. I had been through a great deal of challenge and trauma even in my childhood. I carried that with me, of course, into adolescence, into my early 20s, dealing with it the way that so many of us do, which is we turn to that which we think will make us feel better. Whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whether it's food, whether it's sex, whether it's shopping, whatever it may be that we think in that moment is going to make us feel better. And of course, we quickly learn it doesn't work, but we don't really have any other avenues. And that's exactly where I was at the age of 25. I was managing. I was managing my life. I was managing my pain. I was managing my struggles. I was managing my addiction. I was managing my marriage. And I thought that that was really the highest goal that one could look for. Everybody I knew was somewhere on this spectrum of managing their lives. No one ever said, hey, by the way, there's something else. Hey, by the way, you didn't take birth to just manage your life. You took birth to experience, to know the truth of who you are. That divinity, that fullness, that wholeness, that joy, that freedom. That is your birthright. Nobody told me that. I had no idea. So when I get to India, and I'm fast forwarding quickly through here, but I have to at least bring you up to speed for the chapter I'm going to read you. So I get to India with my husband, with backpacks, and Rishikesh, this small, beautiful town on the banks of the sacred river Ganga, what we call the Ganges, in the lap of the Himalayas. That was what called to us. I opened up a 500-page Lonely Planet guidebook. You know, it was 1996, 25 years ago. We couldn't just ask Google or ask Siri, okay, hey, where should I go in India? So we had a guidebook. And the guidebook said Rishikesh. We thought, okay, sounds beautiful. A river, mountains, yoga. So we go. And standing on the banks of this sacred river, this river that I didn't know was sacred, I was just hot and tired. And we had arrived in that day. It was September, end of the monsoons. It was hot. It was sticky. I wanted to just put my feet in the cool river. And I had this extraordinary experience of awakening, of oneness with the universe, with the divine. And it immediately transformed me. I couldn't explain it. I didn't understand it. It didn't mean anything to my logical, intellectual, Stanford-educated brain. But my heart had been just blasted open. And over the next 7-10 days, I had this series of experiences that I'm going to fast forward here, but they're all in the book. Experiences of knowing that that's where I was meant to be. Experiences of literally hearing voices, getting my feet stuck to the ground. Experiences of learning to forgive, to let go of the pain that I was holding on to, the pain that defined me, of learning to let that go, of learning to be on my own, learning to trust myself while my husband went off into the mountains and I stayed in Rishikesh. And about 4 weeks into being there, I had this incredible experience that I'm going to share with you. Because today, so many of us are suffering in so many ways. There's so much going on in the world. Whether we look at it internationally, we look at it just nationally, whether we look just maybe at our families or our own careers or our own lives. And in so many ways, we feel so stuck. Like really the best we can do is just manage. And so I want to share with you an experience that I had just a few weeks into being there. And the incredible possibility of actually the truth of who we all are. And that we have the possibility, the ability to connect with that, to know that truth of ourselves when we open our hearts to grace. So the chapter is titled Expansion, and it's chapter 14. So as I said, we've fast forwarded through arrival, through getting my feet stuck, through knowing that I'm meant to be there. A few weeks after I arrived at the ashram, a group of Americans led by a medicine woman, Aphrodite, Kelly from Charlie's Angels mix came to visit. Her outfits ranged from hippie meets Earth Mother to Native American leather bedecked with tassels and feathers. And she brought a bevy of followers with her. These were the first native English speakers I'd met since my arrival in Rishikesh. Since I arrived in 1996, Rishikesh now has become a hub of tourism, the yoga capital of the world. However, at that time, in 1996, while it wasn't exactly off the map, especially since the Beatles had come to Rishikesh in the 60s, it was still far from a tourist destination. The southeastern part of Rishikesh, Swarg Ashram, where Parmarth Niketan, the ashram I now live in, lies, across Ganga and south from the hotels and restaurants, tended to attract more Indian devotees than Western tourists. Here among the ashrams, tea stalls, and small shops, you could buy Rudraksh malas, strings of prayer beads, like this, made from the seed of their sacred Rudraksh tree, Ayurvedic medicine, oil lamps, and statues of the many manifestations of God. But back then, when I walked in the market, heads would turn and calls of madam, madam, shawl, madam, mala, madam resounded. I could feel the eyes of every shop owner and chaiwala. Chaiwalas are the ones who sell the chai on me, not lasciviously, but simply resting their eyes unabashedly on someone who was new and different. Today, foreign tourists are ubiquitous. Signs are written not just in Hindi and English, but in Hebrew, Russian, and other European languages as well. And about half the people on the roads in Rishikesh are non-Indians. The group leader was Jacqueline. And when her group arrived, my world shifted from the internal to the external. I was drawn into socializing, which had been absent during my first weeks in the ashram. Other than occasional words with Swamiji, the spiritual leader, the master, the head of this ashram, the one whose presence and whose words and whose teachings had transformed me from the beginning, which now focused on work and projects and basic discussions with the kitchen staff about an apple or a clean towel. Otherwise, I barely spoke. There were no cell phones, Zoom, or FaceTime. There wasn't even a landline phone at the ashram that I could use. I could make calls only from the phone booth in the marketplace. Inconvenient and expensive. Jacqueline and her 25 American spiritual seekers were middle-aged, mostly interested in energy healing, opening their chakras, energy centers, and indigenous rituals. While there wasn't much connection between us in age, background, or interest, we were all spiritually inclined Americans who spoke American English. That was enough for me, and I spent most of my time with them. We ate together, walked together on the banks of Ganga, and laughed at people farting and picking their noses in public. One evening, they invited me to join them for a Reiki workshop. Upon their request, Swamiji had brought in a Reiki master to teach them. I knew nothing about Reiki, but at that point, I was excited about everything. My life was an adventure, and I had no idea what the next moment would bring. I was in God's hands now. Walk on the Ganga? Sure. Tea? Sure. Reiki? Of course. When I entered the room, the Reiki master was explaining the level 1 initiation he'd be giving that evening. I had missed the introduction, and as I entered, he was saying, "So, my assistants and I will be initiating each of you. As I mentioned, you will not feel our physical touch on your bodies, as Reiki works on the energetic body." Chairs were assembled, and one of the members of the group reached her hand out to me and said, "You should go in the first batch because you must have work to get back to." I sat in the chair in front of the Reiki master. "You missed the introduction," he said, "but don't worry. Just close your eyes and allow whatever is meant to happen. After a few minutes, he spoke again. "Your chakras are so open, much more open than I expected to see in anyone. We are only giving level 1 initiation, but your chakras are so open. I think you're ready for level 2 initiation as well. If you'd like, I can give it to you now." My vocabulary was formed by SAT and GRE preparation books, AP English classes, and the word a day game my parents had initiated when I was in junior high. "This is fun," they would announce each evening after dinner when it was time to play. I didn't find it fun. None of my friends had to play word a day at home with their parents. It was not only not fun, it was a violation of my precious free time. But they were insistent. "Sit down. This is fun." In any case, none of my vocabulary preparation included words like chakra or Reiki, or even the word initiation, the way the Reiki master was using it. I had no idea what he was talking about. But sure, why not? "Okay," I said. The level 1 seemed to have taken only a few minutes. He hadn't even touched me. I just had to close my eyes. How much more could level 2 be? I smiled to myself in amazement at this incredible and unimaginable adventure on which God was taking me. At some point later, a voice seemed to travel from somewhere into my ears. "Okay," I could hear it say, barely audible, "you can get up now." The voice was a physical sensation, traveling from somewhere outside me, into my ears, through my ears, and into my arms, which reached to my sides to grasp the sides of my chair. It traveled through my ears into my legs, and I leaned forward to rise. I had no idea how much time had passed since I sat down or what had happened. "How do you feel?" the Reiki master asked. The words traveled through my ears, and I could feel them in my body, but could not conjure a response. I think I smiled at him before I walked out of the room and went to find Swamiji. It was evening time in early autumn, and Swamiji was in his garden. The air was fragrant with jasmine, and I could feel the beginning of the cool fall breeze as I walked into the garden, the dewy grass wet between my toes. Swamiji sat, as always, in a corner of the garden, this time on a thin mat of woven jute rather than a chair. The small group gathered in front of him also sat on a thin woven mat, and they hung on every word he spoke. I bowed as I approached and sat cross-legged behind the group. I closed my eyes and immediately felt a surge of heat and energy rise. It seemed from the cool grass beneath me, straight up into my body, as though I had sat on a geyser at Yellowstone National Park, except that it wasn't water. It was a geyser of heat and energy. It felt like body surfing on the California coast, except the wave moved through my body rather than taking me to shore. After the wave hit what seemed to be the inside of my skull, it receded down and out below my navel and back into the cool grass. I opened my eyes, and Swamiji's eyes caught mine. He was in the middle of a passionate discourse in Hindi that played like divine music across the background of my consciousness, the musical score to my internal drama. His eyes fixed on mine for a moment. A few minutes later, the group bowed and rose. I too bowed and rose, and I followed them toward the door. Suddenly, I heard Swamiji say, "Come here." He had already started walking into the building of his residence and inner meeting rooms. He did not speak again or turn back toward me, but I knew I was supposed to follow. He turned a key in one of the smaller doors at the end of a hallway. Opening the door, he switched on the light in a room I had not been in before, a small library cum storeroom with no windows, lined with shelves and cabinets, books in both Hindi and English, gifts still in their boxes, many wrapped in colorful, shiny paper, small pads on which he had made notes and plans for decades, and other miscellaneous items filled the shelves. On the floor was a beautiful Persian rug. "Lie down," he said. I did, thinking my Indian adventure was just about to take a new and exciting turn. However, Swamiji just turned off the light and left. I heard the key turn in the lock from the outside. Alone in the storeroom, lying on my magic carpet, I felt my consciousness being pulled forcefully inward, as though a vacuum cleaner inside me was sucking myself inward. I didn't feel called to fight it. I was free to let go of the glue that held myself together, the glue I had held so tenaciously to over the decades of my life. I let go into the waves of energy that rose and crashed through my body. As the waves came in, my whole body expanded. Bones, skin, muscles, all borders and boundaries became a vestige of my former body. I was boundless, and it seemed the most natural thing in the world. There was no running commentary explaining my energetic expansion. The waves swept everything away, and the commentator in my head had drowned in the ocean. According to the scriptural story of the goddess who took the form of the river Ganga, when the rambunctious, intractable Ganga first came down from heaven, she swept away the sages and priests performing their rituals on the riverbanks. The surge of her uncontainable waters washed everything away. Ganga was now flowing into and through me, raising and annihilating everything made of matter. Everywhere I ended and the universe began. I was the universe. As I inhaled, my chest rose and rose above the shelves of books. I filled the room, and I was still inhaling. These shelves and walls too crumbled into the waves of my breath. My awareness rose the waves, existing not in the gray and white matter of my brain inside my skull, but in every molecule of the world, inside me and outside me. There was no distinction. It was all me. The air around me, the room, everything pulsated with my breath and grew and expanded. The walls and shelves obeyed, and they too made room for my ever-expanding being. It was all me. After an indeterminate amount of time, a sound in the door reached through my ears, through my brain, and found me floating somewhere beyond it. The noise took hold of a part of my consciousness and carried it back into my body, into my skull, into my brain. By the time Swamiji had opened the door and turned on the light, I had processed the sound. Ah, a key in the lock. Standing in the doorway, hair, beard, and robes merging into one extraordinary formless being, Swamiji looked down at me. I could not make the borders of his body or clothes stay in one place. They kept dancing, merging into and out of the space between him and the door frame. But his eyes were sharp, clear, and in focus. "How are you feeling?" he asked. I exhaled, and my consciousness escaped on my breath into the dark brown of his eyes, into a world I'd never visited. A fragment of awareness left back in my brain, registered that he had again turned off the light, closed the door, and once again turned the key in the lock from the outside. His form had left, but I was still in the world inside his eyes. At some point, after another indeterminate amount of time, I felt my awareness draw itself back into my physical body. The room and walls and shelves no longer moved in rhythm with my breath. I was aware for the first time of the softness of the rug beneath my bare heels and on the back of my hands, which I noticed lay to my sides. My eyes were closed, but when I opened them, the room was so black, I wasn't exactly sure if they were open or they were closed. I blinked a few times and finally realized the room was dark. I had not lost my sight. I was again aware of the rise and fall of my own chest and belly as I breathed, and my own body was once again able to contain my breath. My skin tingled, and I floated in my ocean of joy. A short time later, I heard the key in the lock. This time, the sound did not have to reach through my brain to find me. I heard it the first time, and I understood it would be Swamiji coming back. But it wasn't him. It was the cook, the lovely cook, who, as he turned on the light, looked at me as though it were perfectly natural to be lying awake on a rug on the floor in the storeroom with the lights turned off. "You must eat," he said. "Swamiji say you must eat." He bent down and took my hand in his. I had no awareness of muscle or muscle tone. I giggled to myself as I realized that I could not figure out how to make my limbs move. I knew they should move, but how to make that happen was a non-concerning mystery. Eventually, the cook was able to peel me off the ground, and as he helped me to stand, my coordination returned. Hand in hand, I followed him into the kitchen, where he sat me down on a woven mat and placed a tiny wooden table in front of me. He disappeared and then reappeared with a bowl of hot khichdi, lentils and rice cooked together, the Indian version of chicken soup. Whatever ails you, khichdi is the answer, according to traditional Indian medicine. I discovered that night that khichdi is also the perfect post-spiritual initiation, welcome back to the physical plane meal. So I shared that, Dan, as you come back, because as so many of us these days feel so stuck in our world and the struggles and the strife and the uncertainty and the challenges, to just remember that actually we are one. We are one with all that exists. And you may have that experience as an experience once in your life. You may have it uncountable times in your life. You may have it every moment of your life. But whether it's once or every moment, it keeps us knowing that actually we're not bound and stuck by the problems that we face day to day. That actually there's a truth of who we are that's beyond the roles, beyond the drama. And if we can anchor ourselves in that awareness, it helps us navigate the very inevitable ups and downs of the wave of this human incarnation.
Thank you so much. I want to say to our audience, if you have any questions, please submit them either through the chat or the Q&A. Sadhvi, I thank you so much. That actually kind of leads into my first question, as you described this profound spiritual experience you had. When someone has something like that, where do they go from there? How do they take that with them? I think it's interesting that you described eating right after that and coming back to the physical. But more generally, how does that? What would you say?
Well, I would say, first of all, that actually the longing to return to that is something that's very, very common on a spiritual path. You have these ecstatic moments, and then quite literally you come down, and there's this great yearning of, oh my God, give me that again. Like, how did I get that, and how can I go back there? But regardless of how frequently or how easily that particular very intense experience comes, it changes you forever, even if it's just there once, which is you realize, oh my God, I'm not this body. I'm not the color of my skin. I'm not my race or my religion or my bank account or my relationships or my personal drama. I'm none of that. I actually literally am one with all. And so even if you're no longer in that actual palpable ecstatic experience of that spiritual awakening moment, you have the awareness from it. And so you know that you've experienced something that is more true than anything else. So the teaching stays with you. And I know for me, it's been so powerful because while certainly by God's grace, I've had other experiences like that, it's not every minute. It's not every moment. It's not even every day or every week. And yet the awareness that that is my true self stays with me. And so when the drama of the present moment threatens to grab me, to literally hijack my attention, my peace, my joy, my focus, I'm able to anchor myself back in the awareness, hey, wait, remember that. Remember those moments. Remember that truth. Oh, yeah. You're not this story. You're not the bank account. You're not the job. You're not the relationship. You're not your Facebook page or however many followers you may have. You're not the stock market. You're not these things that are constantly changing. You are one with all. So the way we move through the world changes drastically after that, because it becomes not impossible by any means, but much more difficult to get really riled up about what so-and-so said to so-and-so about you, or, you know, just kind of the day-to-day drama that we face in our life.
Kind of, drafting off that, this has been such a tough year for everyone. And as I said, our theme for writers and books is taking care of each other and taking care of ourselves. I'm wondering, how do you respond to trauma, and what do you say to people who are struggling?
So, first of all, it's important to recognize and acknowledge that we are suffering. Suffering does not go away by repression or suppression or denial. That just literally creates a volcano effect. And that's where we're getting such increased rates of addiction, alcoholism, obesity, domestic violence, because people are literally shoving pain inside, using all sorts of chemicals, from alcohol and drugs to carbohydrates, to literally stuff it. But then it bursts. And so either it bursts and I become violent to others or violent to myself, or I just have to quickly renumb myself again. And so it's important to acknowledge it. It's important so that would be first. The second would be to have compassion for yourself, to understand that there is nothing wrong with you for having these feelings. The fact that you are healthy, that your family's healthy, that you've got a roof over your head, that you've got food in the fridge, does not disqualify you from having had a really tough time. And I know one of the things that so many people I know are suffering from is, I'm in such better shape than other people. Things are actually really safe and healthy and good with me. How dare I be suffering? How dare I be having such a hard time when everyone else has it so much worse? So, number 2 is compassion. To recognize that we are living in a field, an energetic field of stress and anxiety right now that far transcends any of our personal individual stories. We've become kind of a collective field of fear, of separation, of stress. And that impacts all of us, because regardless of how much food is in our fridge or the roof over our heads, we all live in that same energetic field. And this is where it's so important for each of us to do whatever we can to change our own energy, so that we are then changing, quite literally, the energetic field for ourselves and for others. So then the third piece, after the awareness, acceptance, and compassion, is to recognize that we don't have control, and we never had control. COVID has just rammed that truth in our face. We never had control. It was always an illusion. Control over our own health. I mean, certainly there's things we can do to weigh the odds in our favor. We can eat right, we can not smoke, we can exercise. But that doesn't prevent you from getting hit by a bus. Doesn't prevent you from having, the roof of your house fall in an earthquake, or a sinkhole that no one knew existed open up and take you in with it. So we never really had control. But we always thought we did. That if I just work in this way, save my money in that way, build my home in this way, build my life in that way, I will be safe. Everything will be in my control. And COVID has really shown us we don't have control. We must plan. We do plan. And then we leave the rest to God. But that awareness of being so out of control is terrifying for us. Out of control over who sneezes on me, what they've got. out of control of the people our kids are playing with at school, out of control of what's happening in our nation. Will I be able to get on an airplane? Will business ever pick up? Will I be able to actually ever go to a restaurant, a party, be with my friends without masks again? Will it ever be safe to hug again? No one knows. And that's really, really difficult. But the truth is, again, we never really knew. We just didn't know that we didn't know. And so COVID has made this truth very apparent. And I think it's really important for us all to dive spiritually into whatever our tradition may be, whatever our practice may be, into a source of that, which is infinite, that is the truth of who we are. We can call it God, we can call it divinity, we can call it consciousness, we can call it love, we can call it truth, we can call it spirit, we can call it soul. It doesn't matter. But to anchor ourselves in that, which, as said so beautifully in the Bhagavad Gita, cannot be burned by fire, cannot be cut by knives, cannot be wet by water, cannot be dried by the wind, that which is eternal, was never born, will never die. And that's what this experience of expansion in this chapter that I chose to read is really about. That's the truth of who we are. We've been created not just by the Creator, but of the Creator. And we have this extraordinary experience, opportunity to have these beautiful dramas, to live our lives, to learn, to serve, to love, to connect, to grow, to experience, and it's beautiful. But it isn't actually the truth of who we are at the highest, deepest level. Who we are is that which was never born and will never die, that is one with all of creation. And so in whatever way you can anchor yourself into that, and it may be, by the way, just meditating on a sunset. It may be an open-eyed meditation on the ocean or on the stars in the sky or into the eyes of your newborn child or at the base of the tree in your backyard. Doesn't have to be through any kind of formal religion or spiritual practice, but just anchor yourself in something that is beyond the cells and the bones and the muscles and the blood of your physical body. And it will almost immediately anchor you back in truth, in love, in joy, in faith. And for me, that's been the greatest antidote to the stress and to the struggle, both of the last year as well as that of the 49 years of my life before that.
Thank you. Again, if you have any questions, we have a little bit more time. Please submit them. I just want to ask you, you've been involved in many different humanitarian projects, education, empowering women, fighting poverty. I want to ask if what connects these different things for you and what motivates you to the service.
Beautiful. Well, as I was saying, the truth of who we are is one with all. And when we meditate, we have an experience of expansion, an experience of oneness, an experience of connection. And it may simply begin with losing losing that sense of where your leg ends and the cushion you're sitting on or the chair you're sitting on begins. It may simply be the feeling that there's a fan blowing on you from one side of the room, but you start to kind of feel it on the other side of your body as well. That beautiful, beautiful experience of a dissolving of the borders and the boundaries of this very limited physical body. And then as we stand up from meditation, that awareness stays with us. And whether it's meditation, whether it's yoga, the word yoga literally means union. That's what the word means, union. Not just a union of my nose to my knees or a union of my fingertips to my toes, but a union of this self, this individual, small, finite self with the eternal, infinite self, that capital S self. So when we get off our yoga mats or stand up off our meditation cushions, the easiest and most powerful way to maintain that awareness is through service, because we see the world not as separate. So whether it's children, girls, women, sick people, villagers, polluted water, those getting sick from drinking the polluted water, trees that are being cut down, villagers and indigenous people whose land is being deforested, whatever it may be, whomever it may be, the awareness that they are not separate from us is such a powerful spiritual teaching. And so we serve out of the awareness that they are not separate. In the same way that when my stomach growls, I feed it. If my elbow itches, I'll scratch it. In the same way we respond to the needs, the pulls, the calls of the world. And we do it to keep reminding us, to continually re-anchor ourselves in that awareness of our oneness. We don't serve as we over here serving those of you over there. It's self-serving self. And it's us being so grateful to those we serve for giving us the opportunity to see ourselves in them. So it's a great blessing. And yeah, it's important to mention also that 100% of everything that comes in from the book to me as the author, 100% goes directly to the nonprofit charitable work for the girls, for the women, for the children of the Himalayas, for the free schools that we run, for the women's programs that we run, for the medical care programs that we run. All of the money that comes in to me goes straight to them.
Thank you. We have a question from the audience, and I'm afraid this will have to be our last question. But from Nina, she says, I'm wondering if Sadhvi has any advice for people experiencing writer's block as someone who's written a number of books.
Sure. So there's two types of writer's block. One is the, I have no idea what to write about. Like, I should write something. I want to write something. I'm a writer, but I don't know what to write about. The other type is, I know what I want to write. I just can't start. For the first one, I would say do something else. Do not sit at your computer staring at a blank piece of paper or a blank screen, hoping that some idea is going to fall into your head. For me, the ideas come typically out in nature. I'm taking a walk. I see something. It inspires an idea. So for the I have no ideas, I would say spend time in nature, by yourself, because of course, if you're taking a walk with a friend and you're just talking, the ideas are not going to come. Do things that are enjoyable, but that create enough space in your mind into which your own thoughts flow. Don't go with the agenda of like, I'm going to take a walk so I get an idea, but just, I'm going to take a walk and I'm going to notice things and I'm going to be aware. And I'm going to be aware of my breath. I'm going to be aware of my feet touching the ground. I'm going to do mindful walking. And inevitably, something will hit you, something will strike you. Ideas will flow. And it may not be the first walk you go on, but just live your life open and create enough literal quiet in your day that there's room for that spaciousness into which ideas flow. And then for the second type, where you know what you want to write, but the words just don't come, I literally close my eyes. When I type, I literally close my eyes and I type. And obviously, I make a billion spelling mistakes and a billion grammatical mistakes. And my whole page is all red with spell check, basically screaming at me, let me help you. But that's okay. And of course, you go back later and you fix the spelling and fix the grammar. But I do it in that way because it allows me literally just to write in a very meditative way. So I sit down with an idea and I just start typing. Eyes are closed. I have no idea if I've typed 5 lines or a page. And I just type as long as it flows, half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever it may be. And just do that. And I find that it allows things to flow much more easily. If you are not such a confident writer that you could, find at least the majority of the keys on the typewriter, the keyboard with your eyes closed, dictate it. Sit with your eyes closed and just speak. Sit in the grass, sit beneath a tree, and just speak. So that you're not staring at a blank screen in front of you, going, oh my God, that's only 5 lines. Allow it to flow from you. And don't censor. That's the other really important thing. You can always go back and edit. But don't censor as you write. Just do it as a stream of consciousness. Doesn't make grammatical sense, no problem. People are going to laugh, no problem. Just do it as a stream of consciousness like you were journaling. And then you can always go back and edit out whatever you want to edit out. But let it flow through. Literally like you were, on Freud's couch with your eyes closed, just in a stream of consciousness. And that's how I do it.
Thank you so much. I'm afraid that's our time, but thank you for being here, for doing this. I want to thank Livonia Public Library. I want to thank our funders. I have a screen here. I will put this up. Thank you to our funders. Buy Sadhvi's book. The link is in the chat. That supports us. It supports her charity. I want to thank everyone for coming. A video of this reading will be online on our website within a week or so. And I want to thank everyone for coming and have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dan. And thank you so much to everyone. And I really, really look forward to your thoughts and your responses after you read the book. So I would love to hear from you. I wrote the book for you. And so as you read it, and as you find your healing and your transformation and your freedom in it, share with me. Share with me how it's impacted, how what I've learned in these 25 years about forgiveness, about letting go, about opening and expansion and freedom and meaning in life. How what I've learned, how it's impacted you. Let me know. I really, really look forward to hearing from all of you. And thank you so much, Dan, and thanks to all of the sponsors and all of the organizers. It's been such a beautiful opportunity.
Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.